Hi there, I'm Heather, and this is my husband, Dr. Ron Llewellyn.
Welcome to Life Together.
A place where we share,
Laugh,
and try to provide helpful information on things like marriage,
relationships, mental health issues.
We've been married for 18 years.
We have 2 cats, no kids.
Yeah, so take any parenting advice with caution.
You know, in 18 years, we've been through a lot. We've learned a ton.
And we just want to share those lessons with you. So we hope you enjoy. Hi guys.
Hi everybody, we're back.
Welcome back. Again, I'm Heather. This is my husband, Dr. Ron.
I appreciate the introduction like that. That term doctor drives me nuts. I joke that the only person in the world that has to call me doctor is my mother-in-law.
Oh,
sorry.
Right, funny.
Okay, I'm just kidding.
So, not that any of you care, but I've got my glasses on, so if I'm squinting and get lost, I don't see very well in these, but I'm really hoping I don't have pink eye. We'll find out in the morning, right? I'm going to get super close and touchy, but no, my one eye is so red, it's crazy. I don't know if it was our trip to the farm, chlorine, I don't know. Anyway, it's a mess. So, you get me in my cute glasses today.
Yeah, cute glasses.
Yeah. But we're back to talk more about post-traumatic stress disorder. And kind of continue where we left with our last episode.
Yeah, and again, by the way, I'm still sick, and so my voice is going to go in and out. I'm going to rely on my water and the love of my kitty cat who's under the table here.
Oh,
Hey, bud.
so Motley might make an appearance today again.
Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Hopefully he doesn't distract Ron the whole time.
Oh, I know, then you'll be stuck talking about PTSD all by yourself.
Then we're in trouble.
Alright, so if you recall where we left off, actually we went through and discussed all the symptoms quickly, and then in the last episode we took the very first criteria of PTSD, the presence of the trauma, and we explored that a little bit more. So if you're interested in that, definitely go back and watch that episode. It's actually going to be extremely important. I use the word important again every time. It is important to go back to that because I give a cursory understanding of defense mechanisms, which will be essential. Not important. It's going to be essential to what we're talking about because, as I mentioned before, all of these symptoms, at least for the most part, can be seen as adaptive, healthy coping strategies in the midst of the most horrific events in people's lives.
Right on.
Well, great. And one thing I don't want to do, and I think I did this last time, is I kind of started rambling about Freud, which, you know, I've got my man crush on Freud, of course. Anyways, I felt like I kind of left her out.
We're going to stick to the topic. Well,
no, that was the topic.
You were on topic.
It was on topic, yeah.
We're going to try to do this together.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Would you mind recounting? So we talked about the trauma. We're into the second batch of symptoms or signs called intrusive symptoms. I'm going to ask my beautiful wife to go through, and they're right here on the screen.
I thought you were going to ask me to remember something from last time.
These are the 5 symptoms of intrusion.
Intrusive symptoms. Okay, number 1, recurrent, involuntary, and intrusive distressing memories of the event.
Yes.
Right, okay. You want me to just
go
through all of them? Okay, number 2,
then
recurrent distressing dreams related to trauma. So memories, dreams. Number 3, dissociative reactions. Example, like flashbacks. Number 4, intense distress at exposure of cues. Number 5, marked physical reaction to internal or external cues.
Absolutely. That was
You're
so
welcome.
well done. Of course, like always.
I can read. day for me.
Can I tell them what you couldn't do up until like 4 years ago? Or do we leave that secret?
What is this?
Fruit.
That was way more than 4 years ago. That was like 20 years ago.
Alright, whatever.
We'll tell that story another time.
Yeah, we'll leave
Remember,
that.
we were going to stay on topic.
That's right. Okay, so let's take a look at the very first two things regarding the recurrent, intrusive, and distressing memories and the nightmares about the trauma. I've had a lot of people ask me, how could this possibly be a method of coping? It's very interesting that it is, because if you didn't have the distressing memories or the nightmares, some of this material would not be processed very well. It seems kind of weird, huh?
Kind of.
So let me give you an example real quick. Not really a trauma example by any stretch, but have you ever gotten into an argument with someone, and after the argument, like 5 minutes later on your drive home, it just keeps spinning in your head, all the things you didn't say, how you could have won that fight, and all you.
No, never. Never about you. No.
Oh, of course.
No.
I'm always right. So that's an example. That is intrusive, although it's not traumatic. It's an example of an intrusive memory processing that tends to happen. Did you know it most often occurs when we don't feel that we fought the argument as well as we could?
Okay.
Not always. I mean, we still have them when we win, or we think we win the argument. But if we feel like we didn't quite get the upper hand, it's a lot worse.
So in a traumatic event, we talked, I think the first episode, about that feeling of helplessness.
Yes.
And so to me, this is, you're going back and you're trying to, in your mind, figure out, how could I have done something different? How could I have, stopped it, whatever it might be.
Yeah, in a sense, but a little bit more on an unconscious level.
Right. Okay.
So back in 1975, and yes, that was a while ago, don't even go there. In 1975, 1976, there was a researcher called Marty Horowitz, and this was before PTSD was even labeled PTSD. In fact, I think at the time it was being called shell shock or combat neuroses. Anyways, Horowitz started to do a lot of research into this, and what he found out regarding these intrusive thoughts is that we have, well, he called it a stress response syndrome. And he said, I believe what's happening with these intrusive thoughts is the mind is deliberately repressing them, which is a defense mechanism, to keep them down during times when our mind has become too overwhelmed by them. And then we can't keep them repressed forever, because we need to try to work on implementing what has happened into our world, so it will allow the intrusive memories to emerge to try to process and understand them. And so basically using cognitive material, a schema, do you know what a schema is?
No.
No? Okay.
That's a big word.
It is not. It's actually like, what, 5 letters? 5 letters.
Can you spell it?
Yes, I can. I just did.
He's the worst speller.
Whatever. Schema is like an accumulation of everything we've learned in our life, and we see the world based upon these experiences, and that's in summary, that's a schema. Well, when a traumatic event occurs, it's outside of our schema typically, because it's a bit abnormal, or very abnormal. And so to understand it, we need to incorporate it and to make meaning of it. And there's another element, which we'll talk about a little bit more in detail, but when we go into memory storage, we're going to find out the memory isn't stored as effectively as it would be in a kind of a normal memory.
Okay.
And it requires the integration of all those different forms of memory to help bring to a person to a place where they can understand, oh, this body symptom and this emotion and this memory all fit together. Now I kind of understand why I feel the way I do. So a lot of times they're separated.
Well, all right.
Well, all right.
Okay.
Do you have any comments on that?
I don't.
Okay, so just to go back to my comment on defense mechanisms, It basically is, it's repression, is what it is. It's a form of repression and suppression, a deliberate defense mechanism that is in the mind. She's going somewhere.
Sorry, I feel like we skipped something here. Okay. Never mind.
I have this perfectly outlined.
I know. Continue.
Excuse
I
me.
apologize.
Okay. Now she totally moved my
I've
mouse.
now I've
I'm
gotten
going to do
all
this
messed
without
up.
even looking at the computer.
Oh, too far.
I looked. I went too far. Alright, so now the third symptom in the intrusive division is dissociative reactions.
Okay.
And
What does
now,
that mean?
what does that mean?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
I don't know.
I feel like I need to let you talk a little bit.
Well, I don't know what this means.
Sorry. Dissociation is actually another defense mechanism. Remember, defense mechanisms are there to try to increase pleasure and decrease distress or pain at any cost, with the exception of violation to reality or boundaries or moral structure. Unfortunately, dissociation violates reality a little bit. So it's not the healthiest defense mechanism, but it's one that develops relatively spontaneously in trauma.
So what do you mean by dissociative?
Dissociation.
Explain that.
Well, let's start with the term associate. What does associate
So
mean?
you're sort of like aligning with something.
Yeah,
right?
connecting with something,
Yeah,
right? I'm
connecting.
associating with something. Dissociation, disconnecting.
Got it.
Got it? All right, and so you think about multiple personality disorder, which is now called dissociative identity disorder. That's a more extreme form of dissociation. Now, there's, as I mentioned before, a lot of these defense mechanisms fall upon a continuum where some dissociation may be as simple as kind of daydreaming, because you're disconnecting from reality at the moment, but not in a psychotic way. Or you have dissociation where you don't feel like yourself, or you feel like you're watching a movie of your own life. That's called depersonalization and derealization. Or you have multiple personality disorder, which, by the way, I do believe exists. I try to help people, several people who have that. Great, wonderful, resilient people. Or you can have a psychotic dissociation, which we're not going to get into because it's not really relevant to what we're doing here. But dissociative reactions, our princess is scratching.
Sorry, I'm distracted. Now I'm distracted by the cat.
Oh yeah, you get distracted. One of the things that is considered a dissociative reaction is a flashback. And it is because in a flashback, a standard flashback, we leave the present moment and we go back as if the event, the trauma was happening at that very moment. Yeah.
Okay.
Now I've seen it kind of on the lesser side of things, intrusive memories start to overwhelm. That's like a light flashback, or it doesn't quite fall in that category, but people can literally believe, hey bud, can literally believe that they are in the moment. I remember receiving a phone call from one of my clients some time ago who was hiding in the closet and called me because she was being attacked, which tripped me out because I didn't know if she was being attacked or not. But then as she described what was happening, I realized it was actually a traumatic event that had happened to her about 20 years ago or so. And it got triggered again. So she was actually believing that that was happening.
It's happening again.
Yeah. Now there's interesting other forms of flashbacks. Body memories.
What would that be?
Bessel van der Kolk wrote a wonderful book. Although it's interesting, when I sat in one of his lectures, he said he kind of regrets some elements of this book, and I never quite understood why. It's a very highly regarded book called The Body Keeps Score. And this talks about the muscle memory and the neurological memory of the trauma. Let me give you some examples. A long time ago, I was doing a trauma group, and we were doing a form of therapy called cognitive processing therapy, where the person reads about the trauma as if it's happening,
Okay.
And I noticed as this person was reading the trauma, the right side of her face turned flush red. And she grabbed it kind of because she felt something warming up. And I look at her, I was like, okay. Her next sentence was, that's when she was hit in the face with a blunt object. I bet you can guess what side of the face it was.
Right side.
It was the right
so
side
it's
of
an
the
actual like physical manifestation.
Actual
of
physical
something.
manifestation of something.
Okay. So like say someone was stabbed in the stomach.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. And they're feeling that pain. They're showing I don't know, red. Okay, just exactly what you talked about.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was talking about. A more extreme example actually came to my attention about 3 weeks ago. A woman who had been pretty brutally assaulted, was having a nightmare of being sexually assaulted. And she woke up and was bleeding from her vagina. It wasn't her period, and the bleeding lasted about 2 hours. And there was no medical reason for it other than it related to what was going on in the nightmare. And the body seemed to most likely respond as if it actually happened again.
Wow.
These are very, very difficult. I bet you can imagine how difficult these are to cope with. I mean, I've had body memories of people smelling the smell of certain types of traumas. War veterans have this, the smell of war. Yeah. Anyways, that's dissociative reactions. So the basic premise here is that it can exist in all sensory modalities, or all of them at the same time.
Okay. So meaning you could have like a touch. Is that what you're talking about? Like you might feel something, you might smell something, you might see. Okay. Taste.
Yes, in fact, that brings, I'll probably post a picture of this with the video of a drawing that one of my longtime clients had done. She was having problems sleeping because she kept feeling stuff on her body, but there was nothing there. And she was having a hard time describing it, so I handed her a pencil and a paper. And she literally drew this haunting image of this body completely made out of handprints.
Ooh.
And she looked at that and she goes, I know what that's about. And I think you could probably figure out what that's about as well.
So, and again, as far as I know, I don't have any PTSD, but anytime we kind of talk about those like sensory cues or something, this always pops into my head, and it's not PTSD really, but it just maybe can help you relate. So, when we lived in San Diego in, what year was that, 2002, 3-ish?
It's 2003.
They had huge wildfires, and they were coming like in every direction, coming from the south, coming north, so it was this sort of engulfing thing. And we were very fortunate that we weren't like directly affected. We were ready to evacuate, but we never did. But we went out a day or so after sort of things came back, back online. And that smell of like just like forest fire, anytime I smell fire now, immediately takes me back to those images, to that, and it was again, we were totally fine, but it was sort of stressful, and that heightened awareness, and like immediately that smell every time, and that's been 15 plus years ago.
And do you have like a physical response to that? Like a little bit of tension?
Yeah.
Little does Heather know, she walked right into the next category of symptoms.
Oh, I did?
Distress at cues of an event. The smell of smoke. We both have this.
Yeah, same thing.
It's not really serious at all. We just smell smoke, and we'll both look at each other like, man, does that bring back some
Right,
memories?
it just brings back that, and that can happen with any kind of, that could be a pleasant memory, right?
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
in our case, this was an unpleasant memory, but that cue immediately takes me back.
Yeah. And a little funny story really quick about that. I remember shortly after they started to get the fires contained, Heather and I had went down to this restaurant, and there was so much smoke in the air. It was absolutely crazy. People had these masks on and everything. And we walked, people were sitting outside because there was still a line at the restaurant. And this dude had a gas mask on, like a military gas. You don't remember this?
Remember this.
Oh, I laugh so hard. I tell the story all the time. He had a military gas mask on. I see him lift the gas mask up, take a puff of his cigarette.
That's right.
Pulls his, you did remember.
I think I do remember that.
Okay. Little side note, besides the gas mask guy, do you remember you came home from work one day and told me you had to drive through the fire when it crossed I-15, San Diego?
Yes. Well, I wouldn't say through the fire, but
She made it sound like it was through the fire.
It was super close. Yeah.
It's like an action scene.
And then, so there was a super small brush fire out in Salt Lake by the airport years ago. And it crossed over the road. And I think we were together.
I think we were.
And I'm like, you better go drive through that. And same thing. Back to that year in San Diego. So,
Oh, yeah.
anyway.
Okay.
Long story.
So this goes back to what we're talking about with distress at cues. We have a physical response and we'll have an emotional response to it. Or, excuse me, people who have trauma will. So how could this be a defense mechanism?
I don't know. It seems opposite of something that would be helpful for you.
It does. Let me ask you this. The pleasure principle is?
You want things that are pleasurable.
You want to
Not
feel better
painful.
and reduce feeling bad, right?
Right.
Is fear a pleasurable feeling?
No.
So if something triggers fear, it means there could be a danger, right? And so what do? The fear tells you, get away.
Get away.
It's basically an alarm system. And the whole next series of symptoms, I believe, is a more elaborate explanation of the ones that we just did. It is our alarm system that says, hey, this reminds me way too much of what's going on, or it causes me to think about stuff that I don't like, and that causes me tension. And so it's really good to have these alarm systems to help keep us safe. In fact, you know what? I have another example here before we move into the next category.
Well, let's hear it.
This was an interesting one. This took a while to figure out. So one thing that's been well researched is that people who have been traumatized tend to perceive things as dangerous more often than those who haven't, which I think is pretty logical. And that's, again, that stress response that tries to keep us safe. Even if there's little evidence for it.
Okay, even if it's not a dangerous situation.
Yeah. Okay. One of my clients a long time ago, she was going to go find an apartment, and she was walking up to the office building to talk to the manager in the office building, or the office manager's office was along this winding path, so she had to walk along this winding path to get there, and she went straight into a panic attack. It took us a good week and a half, 2 weeks to figure out why a panic attack occurred there. But as she was talking about it, she started to have a few more memories of being assaulted in a very similar winding path type of place. So it triggered her. Didn't even realize it. Very unconscious.
Totally different situation, but just sort of walking in that pattern.
Yep.
And there wasn't any danger.
No.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, not cool. Interesting.
Yeah, that was not.
That wasn't
not
cool.
very cool. Not at all. So, but that finishes up the section on intrusiveness. That's pretty fast. Well,
Yeah.
sort of. Probably like 23 minutes
Probably.
and 9 seconds.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Well, should we sign off?
Yeah, so this is a big topic, so we're trying to just sort of break it down, keep these shorter for you. So we'll come back and talk about this a little bit more. But yeah, if you like what you see, the things that we're talking about, subscribe to our YouTube channel, check us out on Facebook and Instagram, and then just share it with other people. So they, if you think someone else might benefit from this, let them know. yeah, we just hope that what we're talking about is interesting, if not helpful for you. So
Yeah.
great.
All right. Well,
Okay.
thank you again for signing on.
Thanks.